Right, so this is where we left off after we'd done the solid site model. So this time we're going to do a bit more laborious version, but the one that gives you more control over the materials on the site. Okay, let's just check what level the drawing is at, otherwise we could be kind of compromised right from the start. So use the ID command, so it's ID, enter, pick a point, and we're interested in what it's saying for the Z coordinate. So we're at Z of 0. Okay, make sure you're at the world coordinate system when you do that, otherwise you're going to get a bogus kind of reading. Okay, let's start with the road. That's at level 0, it's kind of our lowest object, so may as well kind of start somewhere like that. So set the road layer to be current, and then it's basically a simple rectangle shape, so I can use a 3D face there. So 3F, enter, and we draw around the shape either clockwise or anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise is really the norm, because it then means that that surface faces upwards. If we did it clockwise, it would be facing downwards. Okay, so you'll when you do a lot of modelling, you'll find you will end up working anti-clockwise. So I picked my 4 points, and then we check that that's been surfaced properly. Okay, that's looking good. Back to 2D wireframe. Now it's quite easy with 3D faces to end up with an extra surface. Let me just draw that again, but do it wrong instead. So 3F, enter. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. But if I come back to where I started, which is the kind of the habitual thing to do, and enter now, we get an extra triangle. So there's a 4-sided 3D face there, but also a 3-sided one. Okay, so watch out for that extra triangle appearing. It's because you've come back to where you started and you shouldn't have. So I'll delete that. Okay, just check it, make sure the road's there. Good. Okay, now the next object is really the path. We'll do the curb separately because that's a little bit trickier. Okay, the next reasonably big object is the path. So we want to define the areas that are all at the same level. Okay, now there's a couple of little fillets that have crept into this drawing. I must have had a radius set at some point, so I just got rid of that. So we come up the transition here onto the level area, but then at this point the path will be sloping upwards along with the ramp. Okay, so let's just put in a couple of little markers to help us remember that. So I'm changing to the pavement layer, and I'm just going to draw a line across at this point, and this is where there's a change as well. Okay, but all this area is flat. Okay, so let's put a polyline on that, and then we can move it into position and then decide how we're going to surface it. So we're just polylining just now, just to help us work things out. So we come to the top of the curb there. To this point is where the transition starts, and then we've got that triangular sloping bit, which is trickier to define. So we'll come to here, along to this side, back to the corner of the transition, to the end of the curb, over to the building, and we can just run right the way along now to this end point and then close the shape. Okay, so that needs to be 125 millimeters above the road. Okay, so what we do is we move that upwards now, and we don't have anything we can pick on to use as a guide, so we're just going to actually change the elevation of the object. Okay, so you can either change elevation or you can move. I'll do the move on this one and then we'll change elevation on the next one. Okay, so it's move, pick the shape, enter, base point can be anywhere, set the direction, we've got ortho on as well, so the direction needs to say +Z. Okay, so this is like what we did with the lid for the cube. Okay, so we set the direction, plus Z, and then type in 125. Enter. So we're 125 millimeters above the road level. Okay, now what to surface that, and we've got options now. Because that's completely level all the way across it, we could use what's called a region. So it's, if we didn't want to edit that in any way, a region's really quick. Okay, so let's do that. So reg, enter, pick the polyline, enter. And for region to work properly, all the points have to be what are called coplanar. They've all got to have the same Z coordinate. Okay, let's shade it, see what it looks like. Okay, so we can see our footpath is now raised up, but we've got the tricky bit in between. We've got a curb and the transition. Okay, let's change to the curb layer, because we can't put the bit in between until we know where the curbs go. So I've got site curb. Okay, so this bit wants to be at the same level as the pavement. So let's draw a 3D face and then move it upwards. So 3F, enter. So we'll put the curb on. Now that's a bit tricky, it's the same colour as the road. So let's make the road darker now, just to differentiate those. That's a bit better to see. Okay, and then we can move that up into position. So use the geometry carefully. So we're using object snaps to move it into position. Okay, we've got the bit in between is only 25 millimeters high, so we'll 3D face it where it's sitting. So it's a long thin shape. Okay, we actually need to come perpendicular to here. Okay, and then that goes upwards just 25 millimeters. So it's move, pick the surface, enter. Base point can be anywhere, and we're going up 25. Okay, it's starting to take shape now. Okay, this is the 3D face for the sloping bit of the curb. So 3F, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then we need a front to the curb. We don't need a back to the curb though, that will never be seen. So 3F, so I can put the front surfaces on. Can do that here as well. Let's go for endpoint. So does that make sense? So we've got high curb, transition curb, low curb. Now we don't need to create the top and front again, because we can mirror those over. So MI, enter, pick those two shapes, and we want the midpoint of any of these shapes here. So mid, and drag out, and that's our curb, transition curb on this side. Okay, you've got a long thin 3D face to put in now, right the way along the front of the curb there, and we need the curb at this side. So let's put the top in first. So we drew it on the ground first as a 3D face. Okay, move it into position using the geometry. And then a 3D face across the front. Okay, I'm working in the shaded view here, which I generally wouldn't do, but it is a bit easier for you to understand what's happening. So that's quite tricky. That's a tricky little bit of modelling. Okay, we can change to the curb, to the paving layer now, and using 3D faces again, we can draw in the transition. Okay, I'm going to go to 2D wireframe here because it does sometimes pick the wrong points if you're not careful. Okay, so 3D face again. It's a bigger one this time. 2, 3, 4. Enter to stop. Enter to bring back the command. 1, 2, 3. Enter to say you don't want to do a fourth point. Enter to finish. So pretty tricky, but it looks good. It looks nice and accurate. Okay, let's go back to 2D wireframe. Okay, the track here is probably the next kind of main feature we want to put in, so that we can establish the height at the top end as well. Okay, now we're using a layer called tar for that one, Psych tar. Okay, so let's put a 3D face at the back here. We've got an area that's flat, that's going to be up at 675 millimeters. Okay, now what I'm going to do here is give myself a bit of a chance for working in other shapes later on. So I'm not going to do a full rectangle there. I'm going to go to this point and then over to here. Okay, and I'm going to put this bit in as a separate smaller triangle. So it's a 3D face again. Okay, so these lines won't be visible when things render up. Okay, if I do it as just shaded, we don't see the joint, but if I did shaded with edges, you do see that line. Okay, but 2D wireframe. Okay, now these two need to go to a level of 675. Okay, so we'll move them up, move both of them at the same time. Base point can be anywhere, ortho is on, going up 675. Okay, so that's the land at the top of the ramp. Okay, we've got a shape to bring up down here. Now we could draw it on the ground, or if you want to try, see what happens when you draw a polyline starting at a different height. Okay, let's just draw a single line is all we need. Well, actually we need two directions. We need to come over across to here and then back to here. So watch what happens when you draw a polyline. Well, I'll draw the line first and then you can see the difference. So if we draw a line from here to here, the line dips. It goes downwards in height. Okay, but if you draw a polyline, it stays at the same height. So whatever the Z coordinate is at the start point, that's where it stays. So no matter how you try, you cannot get that to go down to level 0. So these are really useful for setting things out in 3D space. Okay, so I've done my polyline. I can now put a 3D face on that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Enter to finish. There's a polyline under there, but I'm not too worried about that because that doesn't render, but we can weed those out at any point. So if I just do a polyline now and then SSX, pick the polyline I just drew, so it's going to look for all the polylines that are on that layer. Enter again. It's not just found the one I picked, it's found the other one as well. It's found 2. So you could now do erase, so it's E return, P return, so it's found 2 of them, and then return again, and they're both gone. So the polyline that was under there has gone now. Right, now what we do is the 3D face for the slope of the ramp. So 3F, enter. So we can just go around it, pick in the 4 points, and that's our 3D ramp. Let's just check it. Looks fine. Okay, so we need the path that's going at the side of the ramp now, and this is where those polylines can come in handy again. So back to 2D wireframe, polyline from here to here, and from here to here. So those lines haven't dropped, but we're giving ourselves that wireframe in space to help us fill in. So we can make the path the current layer again, and 3D face, and another 3D face here. Try and find endpoint. I'm going to switch perpendicular off because it seems to kind of jump in and take precedence over all the others. So that should look good now. So we've got the ramp and the path going up alongside it. Okay, the area in front of the house is parking, but it's all level. Okay, so let's use regions and subtracting regions. Okay, so we've got these white lines on there, so I've got layers for both of those. I thought I did. I don't have a. Oh, no, I've got a layer for the parking, but we need one. Oh, it's brick. We use brick. Imagine these were kind of set out using bricks set into the ground. Okay, so we'll make side parking the current layer. Okay, and we'll draw a polyline around the parking area. So let's go to 2D wireframe. Okay, so we'll put a polyline around the parking area and close that. Okay, and then we've only got one shape here, but if when we do a subtraction of a region, we lose the shapes. So what we could do is copy these where they're sitting. So we'll copy these three from an endpoint, come back to the same endpoint. So there's 2, 2 and 2 now. So pick them just once and put those three onto layer side brick. Okay, now turn off layer side brick, but keep side parking your current layer. Okay, because these are going to get absorbed. Okay, so what we do now is region all 4 objects. So it's reg, pick 1, 2, 3, 4, enter. Okay, if I shade it now, we'll see yellow right the way across. Okay, but what we want to do now is subtract these 3 shapes from the bigger one. So we might be able to do that in a shaded view. Let's see if it'll work. So it's subtract from this, enter, then you pick 1, 2, 3, enter. So, you know, regions nice and quick. We didn't have to do lots of triangulation there for 3D faces. Okay, now put it back to 2D wireframe, and what we can do is lift that upwards now. So it wants to go to the same level as the path. Okay, now we might be able to just change its Z height. Okay, so try this. Just use the change command, ch, enter, and we'll pick on the region. Now, so it's not giving us an option here to change any coordinate positions. Okay, now that's in that version of the command. Now try this one instead, -ch, enter, pick the object, enter, change its properties, and we want to change its elevation. And there you can see it says the elevation at the moment is at 0. We want that to be 125. Enter twice. Enter once, enter twice. And it's moved that object up by the 125 millimeters. Okay, if we put the brick layer back on and make brick current, we can region these 3 shapes. So region 1, 2, 3, enter, and then move them up to meet the other. You could, if you wanted to, union those 3 together so they turn into one object. So even though they don't seem to have any thickness, they don't look solid, they still should behave as a solid. And unions don't have to actually touch each other, so it doesn't have to be, you know, adjacent. It can be separate like this, but it still becomes one object when you union it. Okay, so now we can move those from endpoint to endpoint. So we should have yellow parking, but with 3 brown strips to delineate the car parking spaces. So it's starting to build up. Okay, we've now got a gravel area that wraps around the house but also changes level. Now you could, with 3D faces, they're quite kind of editable. So maybe this is a good chance to try that just here. So let's copy this green part of the ramp. Okay, but use the 2D setting out. We'll go from the endpoint here to the other side of this wall. Okay, so we copy the green sloping ramp, enter, from endpoint here, and I'm coming to the other side of this wall, to endpoint there. Okay, let's have a look at that in 3D. There should be just a gap between the 2 green ramps. Okay, but that is too long. We don't want it to go all the way in through there. It will collide with the house. The ramp only needs to come to above this point. So here's where we can use our setting out, our 3D setting out. So we'll make gravel a current layer, okay, and use a polyline from endpoint here to the endpoint there. So it's showing us where that ramp should finish. So it finishes at the end of that line. Okay, let's try that at the bottom one as well. Polyline from there to this point. So we've now got somewhere we can stretch to. So dead easy, just click on the green ramp, take the grip, and we're looking for that end point that's floating kind of in midair. So this is why I kind of quite favour these 3D faces, because of their stretchability. So we've got a thin bit now which actually wants to be on the gravel layer. Okay, there's a couple of polylines in there, but they're not doing any harm. We can leave those where they are. I think the ramp is the same width. The sloping bit of gravel is the same width at both sides. Let's just check that. Let's just do a distance. Okay, we've got 500. There's 500 millimeters on that side. It looks a bit bigger on this side, I think. Oh no, 500 again. So that's ideal. We can copy the sloping bit across to the other side. Just have to be careful how we do that. You could mirror. That would be quite safe, using the middle of the house. The base point for the copy, if you're using copy instead of mirror, that would be the base point. Okay, so it's copy the sloping bit of material, enter, from base point to the corner of the house. Okay, it's starting to work out now. Now we've got some 3D facing that we need to do. So I would start in this one with a triangle. So we're working kind of above ground now. So 3F. So it's 1, 2, 3. Enter. You don't want a fourth point. Enter to stop. And you put that triangle in on the other side as well. So enter to bring back the command. 1, 2, 3. Enter to no fourth point. Enter to stop. And then it's a four-sided 3D face along the front here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Enter to stop. Let's have a look at that shaded. So we're starting to really build up now. Okay, at the back we've got a wall coming through here. Now we could kind of ignore that and just have the wall coming up kind of above ground, or we could kind of create this shape and lift it up. That's probably the more sophisticated way. So let's just do a little bit of tracing there. Okay, so we're going to go from here to here to there to there, there and there. Okay, and then we can lift that shape. If I put it back 2D wireframe, because you kind of lose definition a wee bit when you're in 3D view, we're just lifting this shape by that distance. So we're not changing anything there. This might actually change. Let's just try the change command. Because it's a polyline, you'll find sometimes that you will be able to adjust. Now it's still not allowing us to change. We do have it here, elevation. There we go. Tell a light. So we've got elevation there, and it would be 675. Okay, so it's we call it an absolute level. So that's handy. We're able to lift that up into position. Okay, we don't know where we need to go at this side, so another polyline will give us that setting out point in 3D space. Okay, so 3D faces there. If we put a triangle one on there. Okay, another triangular one here, thin pointy one. Okay, another triangular one here. Okay, we've got too many corners now to do a four-sided one. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 corners there. We can only do a maximum of 4, so let's put a four-sided one in. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now it looks finished, but there's actually a gap here, and that's why you use the shading tools to identify those gaps. Okay, so another 3D face. Enter to finish. Okay, so we've kind of done all the bits that are flat. They're kind of ground surfaces. So now we've got a low curb object here, and we've got a slightly higher wall. We've got a meter high wall on this side. So let's put them in slightly different ways so you can see a few different commands. Okay, so back to 2D wireframe. Okay, now we've got a lot of stuff, a lot of lines now. We're kind of a bit difficult to see what's going on. So just remember the height of the curb is 150, but we'll switch off the 2D layer underneath because we're kind of losing track a bit there. Okay, so what we need here is we could do this in lots of different ways, but I just want to show you a extrusion that's going to follow a path. Okay, so we need to create a path for the shape to follow. So we'll use our curbs layer, and I'm going to draw a 3D polyline. So 3D poly, enter, and we'll just draw the one side of the shape. So this type of polyline is allowed to change its Z coordinates. Okay, so we've got 3D poly there. Okay, now we need the object that's going to go along that path. Okay, so we need to change to the front coordinate system now. Sorry, the right coordinate system. It's got the right coordinate system, so we're working at the end of the shape. Okay, and we said it was 150 millimeters high, so I'm just going to draw a line up 150. Okay, and what I'll do now is put a rectangle over that shape. Okay, so I've got rectangle here. Okay, so there's a polyline under there that could go. I can identify it just now and delete it, but we need this one for this shape to run along. And there's two commands that you could use here. We could sweep the shape, or we could extrude along a path. They should both give you exactly the same result. Okay, so let's try a sweep. Okay, you pick the shape, so select the object to sweep. Okay, then enter, and then it's asking me to give me the sweep path. So that should be this shape here, and it whizzes along. So at the end, it should be vertical. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just check what's happening at the end. So we'd use go back to the world coordinate system and do a distance from point to point. Okay, so there's no changes on the X and the Y, so they're above each other. What you would find though with a sweep is that this point is not above this one because of the changes in direction of the 3D polyline. So let's do a distance there and have a look at that. It's going to be very minor. Okay, so it's only 4.5 millimeters difference between there and here in the X direction. Okay, but watch out for sweeps and lofts along paths, because it may not be giving you the result you want. So it's not a direct lift upwards, it is a extrusion along it. So let's just do that again, but using the extrude along a path, just so you know that exists as well. So we've got extrude, pick the shape you want to extrude, enter, and you've got a path option here as well. So path, and then pick the 3D polyline. Okay, but those will be exactly the same shape. Okay, let's do something slightly different for the wall that's along this side. Okay, now I think we have a layer for site wall. Yep. Okay, now we could use the same 3D polyline approach, or we could try using a thickness instead. So I'm going to put the coordinate system back to the world one, and I'm just going to draw simple lines now along this side. Okay, now thickness is a property of lines, so if we use the change command or the PR command and pick a line, we've got a thickness option. So if we change that to 1000, enter. Okay, now a little change in Autocad this has crept in, which I hadn't noticed, but the lines are simple lines are remembering the coordinate system they were generated in. Now that didn't used to be the case. They would go whichever way the coordinate system was facing now. So let's just change and just let you see that. If I change to the say the front coordinate system, so and then try the change command. Now in previous versions of AutoCAD that line would have now given the thickness in this direction, but it seems to now remember which way it was born in. Okay, so no matter what UCS I change to, the line will only change its thickness, you know, in vertically there, because it was drawn in the world coordinate system. Okay, and because that's a property, you can match it. So MA, and if I match this to the other bits of line, that gives us the appearance of a wall. Okay, but it's not got any thickness to it in this direction. So we need to see that 2D information again. Okay, and we can copy the wall. So we'll copy these 4 thicknesses, enter, and we're looking for the distance on the ground that we need to copy it. Okay, so it's from here to here. Okay, let's see if we can use that again. We could 3D face that's one way of doing it, but if we now drew the edges in the front UCS. Okay, so I'll draw the edges of this wall using the front UCS. Okay, and then give these a thickness. Okay, now I don't know what thickness that is. So what we could use here is the change command from the keyboard. Okay, so -CH, enter. I'll just pick one of them to use as an example. Enter. It's a property, it's thickness, and you can pick the thickness now from the screen. Now the direction can sometimes kind of go the wrong way, but it should go this way. So 1, 2, enter, enter to finish. It worked. So it is remembering its UCS. So let's just test that. Let's go back to the world coordinate system and try and change the thickness of this one. So -CH, enter, pick, enter, properties, thickness, pick, enter, enter. Yep, it definitely is remembering its birth UCS. So we'll match now, MA, we can match this to the other 3 bits, 4 bits actually. So I'm just trying to use this as a vehicle for showing you all sorts of different ways of achieving the shapes. So all our ground is looking good. We've only got the building to deal with now, and I'll deal with that in the third video. Okay, because we've gone on for quite a long time there. It's 35 minutes, so 37 actually. We'll stop this video.